Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have gone through the previous video, which was on how to prepare a year plan. Today, we are going to move ahead towards the second aspect of administration of the unit test. So, first, you have learned about year plan and you have prepared anywhere between 5 to 12 units. Now, in the year plan, we are going to move ahead and we are going to start the first step, and that is how to plan for a particular unit. So let's start with the PPT. I'll just put on the PPT. Okay. So this is what unit plan is. Now, unit plan. When do you plan for a particular unit? Will you plan it before the year plan or after the year plan? Well, a unit plan you should usually start it after the year plan is prepared. Okay. So your year plan has to be ready, and from that you move ahead to the unit plan. So what is a unit plan? Unit plan is nothing but it is the planning of a particular unit. Now you have anywhere between 5 to plan or 12 units that you have planned in a particular year. In each unit you have kept at least 2 to maximum 7 chapters in a particular unit. Now you pick up any one unit, and whatever chapters are there inside that particular unit, you will have to plan for that. But now the most important question is, do we plan for the unit plan before preparing the year plan? Because if you see in the year plan, when you were planning it out, the first thing you did was you tried to identify the chapters and you put them into units. So in that sense, the unit plan comes first and then comes the year plan. But no, the counter argument to this is that the year plan should always come first, because until unless you do not know the number of teaching periods and the number of testing periods that you can allot to each unit, you cannot plan for a unit plan. Thus, unit plan should always come after the year plan. Now, while you're preparing a particular unit, you have to have certain factors, you need to keep them in mind. Now, what are those factors? Even when you are preparing for your lesson plan, there are 4 things which are very important. The first important thing is that you try to think about are you going to teach. After you know what you are going to teach, which is nothing but the content, now you think about, why am I going to teach in this content? What is the intention? What do I want my student to achieve? The third question that is in your mind after you have decided what is the content and why are you teaching it, accordingly you devise the teaching learning activities. And once you have devised the teaching learning activities, the next thing that plays on your mind is, now I want to test whether what I have taught, whether the child has been successful in learning that. So there has to be some evidence of achievement. And these 4 are nothing but the steps in unit planning. So what are those steps? The what of the content, the what of the unit, that is nothing but the content analysis. Why of the unit, why am I teaching it, is the objectives. The next is how of the unit, that is how am I going to achieve the learning objectives, is nothing but the learning activities. And the evidence of achievement is nothing but your testing procedures. Now let us look at what do we mean by content analysis. Now when you are looking at the content, you will analyze the content in terms of what are the concepts you are going to teach, what are the facts, what are the rules, the principles, the formulas that you're going to teach. Is there any additional things that you're going to teach in a particular chapter? What is the central theme? If there are any new words, if there are any figures of speech, if there are any characteristics when you're teaching any concept of grammar, right? So all this will come under your content analysis. It is nothing but it is an in-depth analysis of the chapter that you are teaching. It is an outline that these are the points that you will be covering under a particular chapter. Now why is this important? Well, this is very very important to ensure that the teacher doesn't miss out on any important point that is there in the content that has to be covered. Quite a number of points, certain matter content may not be included in your textbook, but it is there, it has to be taught, and you should not miss out on it. And thus Writing it in during your unit plan under content analysis ensures that the teacher will never miss out on that point. For example, animals have always been classified under three categories: herbivorous, omnivorous, and carnivorous. But now we don't only teach these three types, we also talk about decomposers. Now, a general teacher who has over the years always been teaching about only these three classifications of animal, and she knew that in the fifth standard they don't have to be taught about decomposers. Suddenly, if it has been introduced, she will miss out because it's not in her habit. But writing down in the unit plan during the content analysis ensures that she doesn't miss that point. So this is what is content analysis. After content analysis, we move on to the next aspect, and that is the objectives. So a good teacher, when she decides her content, she also has to identify what are certain major and minor objectives that she will achieve when she's teaching a particular topic. So the objectives have to simultaneously be laid down. And then after you have listed down the objectives, you now move on to the third aspect of the lesson plan, and that is to identify what are the teaching learning strategies that you as a teacher will adopt such that your learning objectives are accomplished. Now, to organize these learning objectives, uh, you need to to understand that your objectives are successfully achieved, you need to very intelligently decide on your teaching learning activities. Now, to organize these teaching learning activities in the most beneficial and in the most befitting ways is not only an art but a science, wherein you as a teacher will have to keep the students' individual differences in mind. You will have to keep the psychology of the learner in mind, and accordingly you will devise your teaching learning activities. So you have to, as a teacher, while you're listing down your content, you list down your objectives, you also have to at the same time decide on what teaching learning activities will you plan in the unit plan of a particular chapter, such that your objectives will be achieved in the most successful way. So yes, when you are deciding on your teaching learning activities, you have to decide on also the teaching aids which will best help which will provide a learner centered and life centered approach to your to your teaching learning process. You will use the right learning resources which will ensure that learning is taking place in an effective manner, and there is a variety of difference in your teaching learning experience. Now, once you have done this, the last and the fourth stage and the last stage of the unit plan is the evaluation procedure. This is nothing but you will identify what are the tools and techniques of evaluation which will help you in realizing whether your predetermined goals and objectives have been successfully achieved. So here in this last step, you will decide on the evaluation tools, the evaluation techniques that you will be adopting, which will give you as a teacher the evidence whether the pupil have understood what you have taught them. So it is a tool for testing which is very important. Now, how do you generally test the student? Is it only through a paper pencil test, that is term exam, final exam, or a worksheet? Well, it could be anything. It could be paper pencil, it could be oral, it could be a demonstration, it could be a role play, it could be a game. So whatever testing procedures you want to adopt, you will adopt. When do you evaluate? You can evaluate it can happen as a summative evaluation, that is your term examination. You can have it as a formative evaluation, that is as soon as the chapter gets over, you test. At the end of the period, you can test. Also, while you're teaching, you test. So you can use n number of evaluation tools that will help you get the evidence of achievement from the students, and they are through quiz, drama, field visits, projects, puzzles, written assignments, oral work. You could have recitation, or you could have practicals. Anything can happen over here. Okay, so that is what in your evaluation procedures are. These are some that we have already made. Now, this is one of the most simplest. After the year plan is ready, this is your next sheet of unit plan. You will remove the sheet of the unit plan and you will go back to your year plan. Say for instance, in my English plan, this is the box that I want to consider for my unit plan. So I will select these chapters only and I will add it in my year plan. Let's see. So unit number 3, sports. If you see here, it is unit number 3, serial number 3, September month, sports, and these are the 3 topics. Okay, so again, I write unit 3, sports. The first chapter is Kabaddi match. I'll write pros over here. And what are the topics that I would want to cover over here? So here I'm going to cover what is a Kabaddi match, how is it played, and the actual match that took place between 9A and 9B. The next is a poem. So I'll write down the title of the poem and I'll write just poem over here. And what are the important points I want to cover over here? So meanings, rhyming words, rhyming scheme. I would want to talk about the poet. For example, it's a very famous poet and I want to talk about that poet over here. So I will write down brief introduction to poet XYZ. Right? So these things, whatever you want to plan over here, you can include. Sometimes you want to teach any part of grammar over here. So for example, there could be a declarative sentence that is there. You want to teach them that, or they could be, say for example, it could be an example of a figure of speech that is simile, right? So you can write simile over here and you just touch upon it or you teach something about it and you quickly move ahead. May not be in depth, but at least you will remember that I have to touch upon this. Now listing this down very clearly ensures that you don't forget anything. Okay, now we come down to the next aspect, and the next aspect is to identify the objectives. So under Kabaddi of match, these are my objectives that I will achieve. So I have very quickly just jotted those points. I have just put a tick or I put a circle or whatever I want to do, I'll do over there such that it indicates that these are the objectives that will be achieved when I'm teaching this particular chapter. Same with don't give up. Next, we also have certain teaching learning strategies that we have listed down. So for English specifically, we have these two: model reading and silent reading is always there by default when you're teaching them English prose or English poem. But for grammar, it is not there. Okay, so this will be there by default for prose and poem. Apart from that, I use questioning, I will be using explanation, there will be discussion, I'll use examples, I'll use a PPT, I'll use the chalkboard. So I have listed those points over here. And the evaluation strategy, well, I have oral work, I will have written, I will make them do a practical work. Okay, so I will ask them to design a kabaddi ground on a sheet of paper which I provide them, right? So all this will be my evaluation strategies, which will help me gauge whether the students have really achieved what I wanted them to achieve. And then apart from the prose and poem, we also have grammar topics. So we have adjectives and their kinds. So here I just briefly introduce what are adjectives, the characteristics and its example. Accordingly, the teaching learning strategies are there and the evaluation strategies are there. And I also have the different types, their kinds. So I have adjective of quality and adjective of quantity. And this also I have listed down what am I going to teach over there, my outline of these two kinds, and what are the objectives that will be achieved. Not written over here the teaching learning strategies or the evaluation procedures because it is already listed over here and it's the same, or you can simply copy it and paste it over here, right? So this is how your unit plan is going to be prepared. Quickly looking at another example of science, where in science, see, the unit is sound. You can take any unit. Okay, try to take a very simple unit in which there are only 2 or 3 chapters. Don't take a unit which has many chapters because it will become difficult for you only. Now whatever you have prepared in your plan, take a small unit and from there on we will learn other activities. Okay, so here again I took a small unit which has only 2 chapters. The first is sound, production of sound, and the propagation of sound. Okay, so this is my outline for it. These are my objectives that will be achieved. These are my teaching learning strategies for each chapter and the evaluation procedure. So that's all for unit plan.